Welcome back. We'll now be speaking with Shellygan Peterson, Project Officer and journalist at the Namibia Media Foundation, who recently attended the annual African Investigative Journalism Conference, the largest gathering of investigative journalists on the continent. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore her experiences at the conference, the insights she gained, and what it means for journalism in Namibia. Shellygan, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Hi, Nina. Thank you for having me.
Well, Shelly, to start with, the conference, the Investigative Journalism Conference, took place a day after the Foundation's annual journalism conference. So let's begin there briefly, just summarizing this year's conference.
Yeah, the Edu conference looked at a number of things. As we know, journalism is changing and we need to prepare the future of journalism for what's coming. As we know, we already have a crisis with media integrity, misinformation, AI-facilitated violence as well. So we had a number of things that we discussed. The outcomes definitely was amazing. We had over 30 members of the academia, media development partners, and active journalists and editors in the room. And it was from various countries, Malawi, Zimbabwe, of course, Namibia, South Africa. And we also had the convener of the African Investigative Journalism Conference there, Bjørgard Trump. So we spoke about and we broke down the current issues, as I said, also dealing with how the future of journalism looks like with AI and what does it mean for journalism. And obviously there is a need for all of us to relook at our guidelines, look at how AI fits in the newsroom. Are we going to be scared of AI or are we going to use the tool to better our lives? And also debunked the myth that AI is there to replace journalists.
Yeah. Well, we're on to the African Investigative Journalism Conference. Did this conference highlight any specific tools or technologies or methods that journalists should be adopting in this 2025, Shellygan?
Yeah, of course, one of them being AI. As I said, if you are going to be scared of AI, you will be replaced with journalists who use AI.
Right.
Using platforms such as the Notebook LM that allows you to put on data that you use and helps you analyze it. Looking at other platforms for transcriptions. It also looks at news production. What does it mean for us as broadcasters? What does it mean for print journalists? And then we were very lucky to get a cohort of trainers and presenters like the Bello Timse, who is from the Reuters, the Thomas Reuters Foundation, who spoke about illicit financial flows. And she gave us a number of platforms to look for data. As we know, data and access to information in Namibia is still an issue. While she taught us that you can look at other platforms such as Comtrade, Open Africa, where you can get data, not necessarily from your country, but from a regional perspective to look at what trade looks like. Where does the money go? Where does the money come from? Yeah, so those are some of the tools. We also had amazing other speakers such as Warren Thompson, who spoke about tracing mining companies and their activities and what it looks like in terms for investigative journalists. So he's from Finance Uncovered, that is a resource for journalists to knock on their door if you've any trouble with investigating mining companies, for instance.
Also talk to us, Shellygan, about some of the gaps highlighted that you believe Namibian journalists need to give urgent attention to.
Absolutely, Nina. There's a number of them. I think number one is just being able to convene as journalists and having lightning sessions such as we had. There was about 3 or 4 sessionings going concurrently. So as a journalist, you can choose whichever suits your needs or whichever spikes your interests. And so that's what we need here. We need just a conference where we can learn to sharpen our tools, where we can learn about illicit financial flows, where we can talk to journalists that have uncovered stories and very heartbreaking stories to learn from each other. Number one. Number two, also, I think that we don't do enough investigative work as journalists. So that highlighted a definite need for us to inspire and groom the next generation of investigative journalists. I know we have a great cohort. We've lost some, we've gained some, but we just need the new cohort of journalists to understand that at the core of it, it must be investigative journalists. That's the future of journalism. And that's where it's headed. And thirdly, also to have another award ceremony other than the EFN's award ceremony that celebrates journalists, where journalists can choose who they believe had the best investigative story or the best story period on and to recognize them at the end of the day.
Shelly, in your opinion, what role do initiatives such as this play in strengthening media freedom and accountability in Africa?
Yeah, I mean, if we can come together, firstly, it highlights collaboration, hey, where you can do cross-border stories. We met a number of journalists, as I said. We met Naledi and Lillian from the Daily Maverick that spoke about food justice. It gives us a different perspective of what your stories could look like. Here we just speak about food insecurity. We speak about malnutrition, but it goes deeper than that. What is the big food companies feeding us? What does our national standards say about our food that we take in? Do we have good regulations? Are our policies implemented around it? So it helps us strengthen each other by learning from each other. It creates a fraternity that's stronger. It creates a fraternity that's able to lean into our strengths. Once that is done, when you speak about credibility, you speak about a strong journalism cohort or journalist cohort in the country and in Africa that can uncover the truth. At the end of the day, that's what we want, to uncover the truth.
Yeah. You mentioned collaboration. So were there any opportunities to collaborate with these other African journalists, and how might that benefit the Namibia Media Foundation in the future?
Yeah, with NMT, we have our imminence of our hub called the Green Screen that's about to set up, where we will do stories and research around our extractive industries, oil and gas and green hydrogen. So with that, we realize that there's a number of institutions who we can work with. I mean, investigative journalists who can teach us a thing or two. We can share stories and collaborate with. So that's what we realized, that we can tap into that resource. I mean, we spoke to, there was Peter Louis Mayberg, who's from the Daily Maverick. I know if you saw in that very viral video where South African government officials were trying to actually not trying to, were bribing him with 60,000 South African rand. And so, I mean, just speaking to a journalist like that and asking him what went into that moment, from the security to the cameras to the sound software, realizing that we can lean on expertise from our neighbors, from our colleagues in Malawi, our colleagues in Nigeria, our colleagues in Ghana. You had Anas, a Ghanaian investigative journalist, a brilliant journalist, who also taught us how to speak and how to deal with whistleblowers. For us, that will be a great help in the Green Screen Hub.
Yeah. Well, Shellygan, just lastly, what was your overall takeaway from this investigative conference?
I realize we're not doing enough, especially in Namibia. We're not doing enough to uncover the truth. There are so many resources we can lean into. We're not alone. Realizing that journalism has changed, how people consume news has changed, and we must get on that train. Otherwise, we'll leave behind. And Namibians are surely telling us that more needs to be done. We need to suit their needs as journalists, and we need to change ourselves. Smaller, leaner newsrooms are inevitable, but what we do with that and the content we put out and how we uncover truth is really the bottom line here for us. And we must get on that train and realize this is a call for duty. Either you're on the train or not.
Shellygan Peterson, thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup. It was lovely speaking with you.
Thank you very much, Nina.
Well, that was Shellygan Peterson, Project Officer and Journalist at the Namibia Media Foundation, speaking to us about the recently just ended African Investigative Journalism Conference that took place, the largest gathering of investigative journalists on the continent, and she was just giving us